Evan Hale had lived most of his life under the wide Arizona sky. People often said that the land shaped a person, and in Evan's case, it had shaped him into a calm, patient, and dependable cowboy. He worked on a small ranch not far from the dusty town of Red Valley. Everyone who knew him agreed on one thing: Evan never looked for trouble, and he never ignored someone who needed help. He believed the world was big enough for everyone: settlers, travelers, and the nearby Apache families who had lived on the land long before him. On a warm afternoon, Evan rode into town to pick up some supplies. His horse, Dusty, moved at an easy pace. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the ground. Evan tied his horse outside the general store, picked up flour, coffee beans, rope, and a few other things, then packed them neatly in his saddlebag. As he mounted Dusty again, he planned to head straight home and take care of chores before nightfall. The ride back always gave him time to think. He admired the quiet stillness of the desert, the dry air, and the scent of wild sage. A breeze brushed against his face, bringing with it the faint smell of an approaching storm. Evan looked up at the sky. A few dark clouds were gathering in the distance. Storms could be harsh in that region, but he believed he had enough time to get home before the rain started. He guided Dusty through the open land, the horse's hooves making soft thuds on the sandy soil. Everything seemed peaceful until something unusual broke the rhythm of the afternoon. A faint sound, almost like a cry. Evan pulled the reins gently and stopped. The sound came again, soft but unmistakable. Someone was calling for help. He turned his head, listening more carefully. The desert was usually quiet, so even a small sound carried far. Evan nudged Dusty toward the direction of the cries, moving slowly until he reached the edge of a rocky ravine. The steep drop was several feet deep, and the walls were uneven and covered in loose stones. At first, he saw nothing unusual, but then, as he looked closer, he spotted two small figures on a narrow ledge partway down the cliff. They were two girls, young, frightened, and clinging to each other. They appeared to be sisters. Their long, dark hair whipped in the rising wind, and their eyes were wide with fear. Evan recognized their clothing and understood immediately that they were Apache children. He felt his heart tighten. These girls were alone and trapped in a dangerous place, and the storm clouds above were moving fast. Evan knew he had only a short time before the wind grew stronger, and the rain made the rocks slippery. He also knew that many people would hesitate to help, worried that someone might misunderstand their intentions. But to Evan, none of that mattered. Two children needed help. That was enough. He guided Dusty to a sturdy tree and tied the reins tightly. "Stay put, boy," he whispered. Dusty made a soft snort, as if he understood. Evan walked to the edge of the ravine and called down gently, "It's all right. I'm here to help you. Don't move too much, okay?" The younger girl's voice trembled as she answered, "Please, help us." The older one looked braver, but he could see worry in her eyes. Evan took a deep breath. The ledge they were on was narrow, and the slope above them was filled with loose rocks. One wrong step could send him sliding. He had done risky climbs before, but never with a storm so close. Still, he pushed his fear aside. The first thing he did was look for a path someplace where the rocks might hold steady beneath his boots. After studying the cliff, he found a section that looked the most stable and began his descent. He moved slowly, placing each foot carefully. His hands gripped onto small ledges in the rock, and his boots pressed against anything that seemed firm enough to hold his weight. The wind pushed at him, and tiny pebbles rolled down past his feet. But he kept going. The two girls watched him with hope shining in their eyes. When he finally reached the ledge, he crouched down beside them. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I'm going to get both of you out of here." The older girl nodded, though her lips trembled. "Our ponies slipped," she explained quietly. "We tried to climb up, but we couldn't." "It's all right," Evan reassured her. "You did the right thing by staying here." He could feel the ledge shifting lightly under their combined weight. They needed to move quickly, but gently. Evan positioned himself so he could help them climb up one at a time. He chose to lift the younger girl first because she was smaller and easier to carry. "Hold on to me," he told her. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her small hands gripping tightly. Evan rose slowly, balancing carefully on the unsteady rocks. He guided her upward, encouraging her with quiet words. Step by step, they climbed until they reached a point where she could safely crawl the rest of the way. "Wait right there," he said once she reached solid ground. She nodded, wiping tears from her face. Now he had to go back for the older sister. The wind grew stronger, tossing his hat slightly, but he held it in place and made his way down again. The older girl tried to be brave, but she couldn't hide her fear completely. "You're doing great," he told her. "We'll get through this." She looked up at him, trusting him even though they had never met. Evan reached for her hand. She grabbed it firmly. Together, they made their slow climb back up the cliff. At one point, her foot slipped on loose gravel. Evan steadied her immediately, saying, "It's okay, I've got you." Finally, they reached the top. Evan helped her up and let her sit beside her younger sister. Both girls hugged each other tightly, relief washing over them. Evan took a deep breath, letting the tension leave his body. He was tired, covered with dust, and his hands were scraped. But he was grateful everything had gone right. "You're safe now," he said with a smile. "No need to worry anymore." The younger girl looked at him with big, grateful eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Evan nodded kindly. "You're welcome." He helped them stand and looked around, trying to decide what to do next. They were far from the main trail, but he figured their family would be looking for them. Before he could say anything more, Dusty lifted his head and let out a quiet sound. Evan turned and saw distant figures riding along a ridge. Even from far away, he could tell they were Apache riders, likely the girls' relatives searching for them. Evan understood immediately that if he stayed too long, it might create confusion or worry. He knew the girls were safe now, and their family would reach them soon. He didn't want anyone to misinterpret his presence. So he knelt down and spoke softly to the sisters. "Your family is coming. You'll be all right." He gave them a gentle smile. "I'm going to head home now." The older girl nodded. "We will tell them you helped us." Evan tipped his hat to them. "Take care of each other." He walked back to Dusty, mounted the horse, and rode away at an easy pace. He didn't look back, not because he didn't care, but because he trusted that everything would be fine now. The wind picked up, and the sky grew darker, but Evan felt calm. Helping those girls had been the right thing to do. As he rode toward home, he had no idea that his quiet act of kindness would bring surprising events the very next day, events that would leave the entire town speechless. Would you like me to start part 2 next? The next morning began like any other in the small town of Red Valley. People opened their shops, swept dust from their doorsteps, and greeted one another while the sun slowly climbed into the sky. Nobody expected anything unusual to happen that day. The town was used to quiet mornings. Evan Hale woke up early, as he always did. He fed his horse, Dusty, checked the ranch fences, and began sorting the supplies he had brought home the previous afternoon. He kept thinking about the 2 Apache girls he had helped. He hoped they were safe with their family now. He didn't expect to see them again, nor did he expect anyone to know his part in the rescue. To him, it was simply something a person should do, help others when they could. After finishing his chores, Evan decided to ride into town again to buy a few things he had forgotten. Dusty seemed eager for the ride, walking with light steps as they approached the town's main street. As Evan got closer, he noticed something unusual. People were gathered in small groups, whispering and pointing towards something near the center of town. Evan slowed Dusty down. The townsfolk rarely reacted this way unless something surprising had occurred. When he reached the street, he saw the reason for the commotion. Standing near the general store was a tall Apache woman dressed in traditional clothing. That showed her importance. She held herself with calm pride, and her face carried both strength and gentleness. Beside her stood the 2 girls he had rescued. The townspeople watched from a distance, unsure of what was happening. Evan noticed how respectful and quiet everyone became. The woman's presence demanded attention not through force, but through dignity. The older girl saw Evan first. Her face brightened. She tugged gently on her mother's sleeve and pointed toward him. The woman turned slowly and looked at Evan with eyes that held deep understanding. Evan felt surprised. He had not expected anyone to recognize him or search for him. But here they were, mother and daughter, standing before the whole town. Evan dismounted Dusty and walked closer, keeping a polite distance. Before he could say anything, the woman stepped forward. The crowd held its breath. The woman spoke with a calm, clear voice, her words carrying across the quiet street. "Are you Evan Hale?" Evan nodded. "Yes, ma'am, that's me." Then something no one expected happened. The woman, known later to Evan as Nali Atza, gently placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head in gratitude. It was not a small gesture. It was a sign of sincere respect, one rarely shown so openly to someone outside her people. The whole town froze in astonishment. People exchanged quick glances, unsure of what they were seeing. In all their years in Red Valley, they had never witnessed such a moment. The woman lifted her head. "You saved my daughters," she said in a steady voice. "They told me everything you did. You risked your safety for them." Evan felt his cheeks warm slightly. He placed his hands on his belt and said humbly, "Any person would have done the same." But the woman shook her head gently. "Not everyone would. But you did." The younger girl stepped forward, holding something carefully in her hands. She looked up at Evan with bright eyes. "Mama made this for you." The woman opened a beautifully crafted pouch made of soft leather and decorated with delicate patterns. Evan recognized it as something meaningful, something not usually given to strangers. The pouch carried symbols representing protection, trust, and gratitude. It was not just a gift. It was an honor. The woman held it out to him. "This is for you," she said gently. "When my daughters told me what you did, I knew we must thank you properly. This pouch shows that you are a friend to our family. If ever you are in our land or need help, you may show this. Anyone who sees it will know that you are protected." The crowd gasped softly. The moment felt bigger than any of them expected. Evan looked at the pouch, touched by the gesture. He accepted it with both hands, aware of the deep meaning behind it. "I don't know what to say." Evan replied quietly, "Thank you. This means more than you know." The woman smiled gently for the first time. "It is we who must thank you," she said. "My children are safe because of you." The two girls stepped closer. The older one said, "You helped us when we were scared. We won't forget." Her younger sister nodded earnestly. Evan felt warmth spread through him. He tipped his hat respectfully. "I'm glad you're both all right." The moment seemed to soften the air around the town. People slowly approached, keeping a respectful distance at first. They began to realize that something important had happened, something that might change the way folks in Red Valley saw their Apache neighbors. A few of the townsfolk smiled at the girls. Others nodded politely at their mother. There was no shouting, no fear, just quiet understanding. Then something even more surprising happened. One of the older men in town stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said politely, "we're mighty glad your daughters are safe." His words were simple, but they meant a lot coming from someone who had once been unsure about the nearby Apache families. More people joined in with words of welcome and kindness. Children peeked from behind their parents, curious about the two girls. The girls smiled shyly back. Red Valley was changing, without anyone planning it. Evan noticed the shift as well. For years, the town and the Apache families had lived near each other, but not truly together. That day, a small bridge formed, not one built with wood or nails, but with respect, gratitude, and understanding. The mother seemed to recognize this too. She placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders and looked around the town. "My family wishes peace," she said softly. "We are glad today brings good feelings." Her gentle voice carried warmth. The townsfolk nodded, some of them smiling. The simple exchange had eased years of quiet distance between both communities. Evan stood quietly, still holding the leather pouch. Dusty stood behind him, flicking his tail calmly. Evan felt grateful to be part of something meaningful. He had not planned to be noticed. He certainly had not expected thanks. But he realized now that his small act had brought people together in a way he had never imagined. The woman and her daughters prepared to leave soon after. Before they walked away, she turned back to Evan. "You are always welcome among our people," she said. "We do not forget kindness," Evan nodded. "The door of my home is open to you too." The older girl gave Evan a bright smile, and the younger one waved shyly as they walked away together. The townspeople watched them go, their hearts lighter than before. As the group disappeared beyond the hill, the townsfolk turned back to Evan. Some patted him on the shoulder. Others told him they were proud of what he had done. Evan simply smiled humbly and said anyone would have done the same. But deep down, he knew that sometimes a single kind choice could change the path of many. Evan mounted Dusty again, holding the pouch safely in his hand. As he rode home under the warm sun, he felt a sense of peace. Life would continue as usual, but something inside him felt different. He realized the world was full of unexpected connections, and sometimes, without planning it, a person could help create moments of understanding that lasted far beyond a single day. The quiet courage he had shown on the cliff had not only saved two lives, it had opened a door between two worlds. And in the gentle silence of the desert, Evan carried that knowledge with quiet pride, knowing that kindness always found its way back in ways he never expected.